Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are setting sail into the really fascinating high-stakes balance of maritime governance. We're going to examine the exact legal blueprint, specifically Sections 279 and 280 of the Maritime Regulatory Framework. This is the stuff working behind the scenes to keep our international and domestic waters safe, highly structured, and, as you'll see, surprisingly adaptable to the elements.
So think about this for a second. How exactly do you regulate the unpredictable? I mean, the ocean is inherently chaotic, right? It's an environment where incredibly rigid rules can actually do more harm than good if they don't have some built-in flexibility. The government regulations overseeing these waters have to be absolutely razor-sharp to ensure baseline safety, but at the exact same time, they need to be legally adaptable enough to survive the harsh, ever-changing realities of the open sea.
It is all about balancing strict government rules with real-world maritime reality. Today, we're going to explore how what looks like a totally static piece of legislation on paper actually operates as a living, breathing system. It's designed to handle those ideal, perfect-world scenarios of running a ship while simultaneously bending to the very real, practical necessities of maritime life.
Section 1. Maritime Governance. Vessels and Crew.
Now, to truly govern the vastness of the ocean, the law can't just apply to the physical boats. It has to comprehensively govern every single person operating out on that water. We're talking from the very top of the command chain all the way down to the newest recruit, and it uses very specific language to do this. Take the term Tyndall, for example. This is a traditional maritime term, and it refers to a skipper, a boatswain, or a crew leader of a vessel. The laws we're breaking down today apply completely to the vessel itself, the skipper, the Tyndall, and absolutely every single member of the crew. By pinning down this definition up front, we can navigate all this specific legal terminology without getting bogged down later.
Section 2. Rule-making power. Central government rules.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 280, which essentially acts as our bureaucratic blueprint. This is where the central government gets its immense authority to actually write the rules that control, well, everything that happens on the water. 13, that's the magic number here. Section 280 explicitly grants the central government authority to make rules across 13 distinct, incredibly granular areas of maritime operation. We are definitely not talking about broad strokes or vague guidelines here. We are talking about micromanaging the reality of maritime life to ensure absolute compliance and safety.
What's really interesting is how we can take that massive wall of legal text found in Section 280 and chunk it down into three highly intuitive buckets. In the first bucket, we have the vessel. Here, the government dictates the exact scale of fittings, the physical appliances on board, and the specific certificates required just to ply or proceed to sea. In the second bucket, we have the crew. This covers manning scales, literally exactly how many people must be on board, mandatory insurance policies, in the exact form of legal agreements with fishers. And finally, the third bucket is the training, which dictates the criteria for approving training institutes, the exams, and even the processing fees. It's a complete, tightly bound ecosystem.
Let's zoom in on that training bucket for a second and look at the Certificate of Competency. Under Section 280, you can't just declare yourself a qualified fisher. No way. The government holds absolute power to set the criteria for the training institutes that teach you, the method of the training courses themselves, and the exact examinations you have to pass to earn this credential. They even regulate the fee payable just to take the exam. It's a rigid pipeline designed to ensure that only strictly qualified individuals are ever out on the water.
Moving over to the human element, these are the crew rule requirements under the government's purview. They define the different grades of fishers, mandate strict manning scales so a ship is never dangerously understaffed, require official written agreements, and enforce mandatory crew insurance policies. Honestly, this strict grading and insurance matrix is absolutely crucial. It's the backbone of safety for the entire global supply chain, ensuring that the people moving goods and harvesting resources are protected, qualified, and operating under one unified legal standard.
Section 3. Exemptions and penalty. Dispensing requirements.
Now here's where our legal framework takes a really fascinating twist. Just when this law seems impossibly rigid and bureaucratic, we discover a crucial release valve found over in Section 279. On one hand, we have strict compliance, adhering to every single prescribed rule we just covered in Section 280. But on the other hand, we have a granted exemption. The government can legally exempt any vessel, Tyndall, skipper, or crew member from a specific requirement. Why? Well, because sometimes a requirement is already substantially complied with in an alternative way. Or maybe compliance is practically unnecessary in a very specific circumstance. The government absolutely needs this flexibility, because a rigid rule that makes perfect sense in a calm harbor might create an incredibly dangerous catch-22 in the middle of a storm. Simply put, the law must bend so it doesn't break.
But to be clear, this flexibility is not anarchy on the water. It is a highly structured legal mechanism. Step 1, the government has to issue a formal order in writing. Step 2, they impose specific conditions as they see fit. And only after those strict parameters are set do we reach Step 3, the exemption is granted. So as you can see, it is meticulously documented flexibility.
And that brings us to the ultimate catch, explicitly stated in subsection 2 of section 279. If a vessel or a skipper is granted an exemption subject to a condition and they breach that condition, the hammer comes down. Without prejudice to any other remedy, they are immediately, quote, liable to penalty under this act. This rule really grounds the entire framework. It proves that the government's willingness to be flexible is backed up by absolute strict legal consequences if you dare to abuse that trust.
So, what does all this mean for us? It leaves us pondering the ultimate paradox of maritime law. If maritime rules must occasionally be bypassed to survive the sea, how do we ensure safety doesn't sink with them? Sections 279 and 280 show us the answer. It requires a perpetual balancing act, granting immense, granular power to write rigid safety laws while simultaneously designing a highly controlled, conditional system to legally bypass them when reality actually demands it. It's just a fascinating look at how legislation survives in the real world. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.